I'd like to switch gears on a civil rights issue that's very important for me.
Okay.
Earlier this month, the Republican National Committee passed a resolution reaffirming your opposition to marriage equality for gay and lesbian Americans. And by the way, it was introduced by a Michigan committeeman who on his Facebook page called gay and lesbian people filthy, among other things. You personally voted twice for the federal marriage amendment as well as in favor of the so-called Marriage Protection Act. And you voted to ban same-sex couples from adopting in the District of Columbia. Specifically, could you tell me why you're so adamantly opposed of allowing gay and lesbian Americans to have equality under the law regarding marriage, which the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled 14 times since 1988 to be a fundamental right for all individuals? And I would also like to know if you would ever support the passage of ENDA if it included gender identity as well as sexual orientation.
So I voted for ENDA the last time it came up, and the bill that we voted on in 2009, 2010, when was it? Was it that long ago? That version I would support again. I have so many different versions. I'm going to take a look at it, but ENDA, okay, the Employer Non-Discrimination Act. This means that people cannot be discriminated against on sexual orientation for hiring or not hiring reasons. So that employment law, I agree with that. That's why I voted for it. We've had that law in the books since like 1982 here in Wisconsin. Lee Dreyfus, a Republican governor, signed that into law. So I do support that. I would vote the same way I voted the last time it came around.
Excuse me, it doesn't include gender identity though.
Gender, what do you mean when you say gender identity? You talk about
Transgender people?
Oh, transgender. I'd have to take a look at that. That transgender was not in the version of the ENDA that I supported. So that one I would have to give. I'm not going to knee-jerk based on something I haven't read. I'd have to take a look at that. But as far as the ENDA version I voted for, I stand behind my position. Adoption, I would vote differently these days. That was, I think, a vote I took in my first term in 1999 or 2000. I do believe that if there are children who are orphans, who do not have a loving person or couple, I think if a person wants to love and raise a child, they ought to be able to do that. Period. So I would vote that way. I do believe marriage is between a man and woman. I mean, we just respectfully disagree with each other on that. I understand that it's a tough issue. Where this is going in law is going to be something to watch this year as the Supreme Court deals with this. The question that is now before the Supreme Court with respect to the domestic, I wasn't in Congress when this passed. DOMA passed in '96, I believe. The question before the Supreme Court is whether or not that's constitutional or not. If it's not constitutional, as determined by the Supreme Court, then that's the Supreme Court ruling. Then I think it will become more of a federalism issue where states determine at state level governments, state, like we've done here in Wisconsin. But as far as marriage, I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. So I've been pretty consistent on that.
But my question was specifically why you believe that gay and lesbian people should not be allowed to marry, other than just you believe it's between a man and a woman.
Well, I do believe that I've always supported things like civil unions where you ought to be granted certain legal privileges to be able to have benefits, whether it's estate planning or benefits or visitation, things like that. But I've always believed that in society, there ought to be a high value placed upon marriage as between a man and woman, and other contractual relationships government ought to be able to recognize so that people can live together in civil unions and things like that.
Why not allow it for?
Well, I'm just giving you my opinion. We may not agree, but I'm not trying to agree. Did somebody over here? Yeah.